Our final speaker is Alex too. Alex.
Hello, I'm Alex, I'm from Maxis, and you've asked me to talk about who is the most influential person in advertising today, and for all of you who work in the industry. You didn't ask me to talk about who's the most exciting, which, if nothing else, is proof that you should be careful what you wish for, and you've given me 10 minutes in which to do it. So, with due apologies, over the next 10 minutes, I'm going to attempt to persuade you that influential is not the same as exciting. It is not the same as sexy, it is not the same as cool, it is not the same as quotable, it is not the same as Twitter-friendly, it is not the same as thought leadership-y, if that's a word. I'm not entirely sure it is. I'm going to try, in fact, to persuade you that sometimes influential can be boring. The way that wheels are boring until you need to go somewhere, or the way that paper bags are boring until you need to put things in them, or the way that pipes are boring until you and your family need not to die of cholera. These things are boring, but important. And that's why the person that I'm suggesting is going to have the most influence on you and your careers in this industry, and has had the most influence on advertising as it is practiced today, is boring but important. And that's why I've chosen Dave Zinman. Who is Dave Zinman? This is Dave Zinman. See? And to understand why Dave Zinman is the most influential person in advertising, not just now, but in the future, we need to take a trip back in time to 1995, when this man was at number 10, and these two were at number 1, and we were just about getting used to seeing these people on our television screens, and there was a new thing called Amazon, which looked like this, where you could go and buy books on the internet, and someone would send them to you, and in fact, there was this new thing called the World Wide Web that people were starting to talk about and use, and that was starting to look like it was going to become actually really rather popular. And then, in the golden summer of 1995, in July, a press release went out. Back in the days when press releases were actual things that people actually typed up on actual typewriters and actually sent to actual newspapers, back when they existed, sorry. There's my chances gone. So, and this press release said, for immediate release, hyperlink advertising explodes on the World Wide Web. July 1995, those little banner advertisements popping up on the internet's World Wide Web are fast becoming a lucrative business. Over $20 million, count them, will be spent on these hyperlink advertisements in 1995 alone, according to Dave Zinman, CEO of Focalink Media Services. Now, to give you a bit of context on what on earth I'm talking about, from about late 1994 onwards, these things had started to appear on the World Wide Web. They were called banner advertisements, or hyperlink advertising, to use their modern name. And this was the first one, actually. So this went out in October 1994, and it said, have you ever clicked your mouse right here? You will. And when you did, it was rubbish. You went to the AT&T website and got to learn about phones. But the point is, this was the first, and it wasn't the last. And by the middle of 1995, these things were starting to pop up, literally pop up everywhere. These hyperlink advertisements were starting to take over the web, what we now call banner ads, for anyone who's slow on catching on. But there was a problem. That if you wanted to run one of these hyperlink advertisements, if you were an advertiser, you needed to go and phone up someone called a webmaster who lived in a basement and had very poor social skills. And when they eventually answered the phone, you had to say, Mr. Webmaster, always a Mr., I guarantee you, I would like to put some hyperlink advertising on your website. Please, could you arrange this for me? And they would grunt and they would code it into their website on an individual basis. And so if you're an advertiser working in the exciting new world of hyperlink advertising, you spent all of your time talking to webmasters. And the hero of our story, you remember his name? Dave Zinman, yes, that's right. Dave Zinman said, this is crazy, this doesn't work. There's got to be a better way. Advertising has got to be able to get where it's needed. And so he thought, I'm going to do something about this, and he built this. And it was called Mango, and it looked like the computer that your dad's probably still got and won't get rid of. And it had a motherboard, and it had a speaker, and it had a couple of these things which are called floppy disks, which are from the Bronze Age. And he developed this machine that said, this machine is going to get advertising where it's needed. And it was a server, and it dealt with ads, so he called it an ad server. So Dave Zinman is the inventor of the ad server. Now, the ad server and Dave Zinman are things that are boring but important. So, you'll regret this. If it's 1995 and you're browsing on yahoo.com, and suddenly you're in the world of Mango, the new ad server, whereas the webmaster used to kind of code it in manually, what you got instead, when you'd go to the page, was a blank space. And that blank space would call the Mango ad server and say, I've got a blank space to serve an ad to someone. And the ad server would go, oh, brilliant, serve them this one. And then if someone clicked on the ad, it said, oh, shit, someone's clicked on the ad, where am I going to send them? And Mango, the ad server, would say, send them here to the AT&T site to learn about phones. And so suddenly, advertising could go where it was needed. Now, why in God's name am I telling you about this? Why are you spending your evening as the alcohol sinks in watching a diagram about ad serving? This is why. Because for the first time, well, for the whole history of the world, all advertising had had one place. It had been attached to the world in a particular page of a particular newspaper, a particular spot in a particular ad break, or the particular side of a particular building. Advertising was stuck to the world, and people came and went and they saw it and it hoped that it would do its work. And suddenly, for the first time, with Dave Zinman, with ad serving, advertising got the opportunity to become a blank space. Advertising got the opportunity to listen before it talked, to understand a little bit about the people that it was seeing before it decided what it wanted to say to them. To behave a little bit, in other words, like we do as people, listening before we talk, thinking, responding, reacting. And ad servers have gradually got smarter. And what ad servers do, effectively, is they allow advertising to listen to you before they talk to you. To say, I know a little bit about who you are, where you are, the device you're on, where I've seen you before, the kind of relationship that we've got, and to judge the kind of things I want to say to you, and then to go away and deliver something that I think will be more useful, more interesting to you. Which may sound technical, may sound kind of dry, may sound boring, but important. But you can think about Dave Zinman as the man who taught advertising to fly, if you like. As the person who said that for the first time, individual ads don't have to be stuck in individual places in the world. They can listen and respond, and they can react, and they can change. And we now live in a world where, in the UK, about 50% of advertising is digital. About 50% of that is mobile, and about 50% of that is programmatic, as in it's extremely capable of listening before it talks. We now live in a world where advertising happens here, not just on the side of billboards, but in the palm of your hand, and when every advert that's delivered into the palm of your hand gets a chance to listen first, before it speaks. And where it can do so in less than the time it takes for you to blink your eye. And that's important. It's important for all of us here. Because our job, all of us, whether we work as publishers or clients or media or creative agency people, is to create sparks, to create moments, to create instants of kind of recognition and amusement and passion and information and intelligence between people and brands. And by giving advertising the ability not to be tied to a specific place, to listen before it talks, Dave Zinman and the people who invented ad serving meant that you can create better sparks. So don't listen when people tell you that you should vote for a dead propagandist who played on the insecurities of 500,000 men, and don't listen to the people who are trying to play on your insecurities tonight by saying advertising's dead, it's all about tying up with celebrities, you can't control the content or the context anymore. We've never controlled the content or the context. But that's what we do. It's our job to adapt to culture, to listen before we speak, whatever that prevailing culture is, and to use technology and intelligence and creativity and wit to do it. So yes, Dave Zinman was boring, and probably still is, but he was boring so that you can be important, so that the work that you do every day can make more of an impact and more of a difference. I said I'd talk for 10 minutes, and I'm pretty close. And in those 10 minutes, around the world, 4.96 billion impressions have been served through ad servers. It's for advertising that listened before it talked. 4.96 billion impressions. That's 4.6 moments, 4.6 opportunities, 4.96 billion sparks. That many opportunities to make a difference with what you do, all of you, every 10 minutes. So why not vote for that? Thanks.
Right, in a moment you're going to start chucking people out of balloons, but let's just précis some of that. Alex 2, boring but important, which I have to say has been my motto throughout my writing career. And then listening before they talked, which has not been my motto throughout my writing career, quite the opposite, in fact. We also had reference to Mango the ad server, which sounds like a character from a Pixar movie, and sooner or later will be a character from a Pixar movie. The only thing I thought, Alice, when you said the 50% of 50% of 50%, excuse me, but I make that out to be 12.5%, and I'm underwhelmed by 12.5% and so on. But nevertheless, you made your argument with great brio. The only thing I would say is you shouldn't assume that Dave Zinman was boring. Dave Zinman, actually, for those of us who knew and loved him... No, seriously. He may have been into bestiality, but he was one of the funniest guys we ever met, and we miss him. I'm sorry. I'm tearing up here. Anyway, that's our 4. So what happens now is that each of you have a thingamajig. See these thingamajigs? Now, part of the problem I have now is that somebody's got to give me a different iPad because you still got it over there, and then the result will come up on my... thank you very much. The one that I didn't take with me. Now, you have 4 people, and in a moment, you're going to start, when I say start, pressing for the button number 1, Alex Drake. Button number 2, Murray Mora. Button number 3, Hannah Markowska. Button number 4, Alex Steer. And you should press the button now. Oh, sorry, yeah, you vote them to stay in, yeah. You only get 1 vote. You vote them to stay in. Oh, how have you voted for them to come out? You bastards! What kind of people are you? Right, abort all that. Can we abort it all? We've aborted the whole thing. I had no idea that you were so horrible. You actually voted for the person you wanted dumped. Well, that's an absolute first on me. You're a disgusting generation. When I leave here, I'm never coming back. No, my fault entirely. I absolutely accept. You are going to vote once by voting with the button for the number of the person whose argument you like best. But I should just say, you're not going to vote for the person that they said is the most influential. You're going to do it on the basis that you're used to professionally, which is, was the presentation good? Did they make a good argument? And are you left with a warm, fuzzy glow at the end of theirs, which is greater than the end of somebody else's? And on that basis, you vote for the person you want to stay in. Now, that's the ambulance coming for me. It's a question whether it gets here before the results do. Oh, God. And the 2 people who are going to stay in... I'm not going to do that ridiculous thing they do on the television. Hannah and second Alex, you are the 2 people who stay in. There's a big... Please come up. Right, now I hope you agree, actually, that despite the fact it's a cutthroat business, the other 2 presentations were pretty brilliant as well. So it's no kind of... Right. What happens now is you now get a chance to question the 2 people left before you then have a vote, voting for the person you want to stay in, we have a couple of microphones. Can the people with microphones please wave the microphone? There's a microphone there, there's one there, and is there one in the middle? Yeah, it's behind the key light, but yes, there's one there. So, it's your chance to ask either or both these contenders really tricky questions to see if you can get to the nub of what they're saying, or catch them out on something, or amplify what they're saying. So who would like to have the first question? I think that's a photograph going on there. That actually, in an auction, that would be a bid. You realise that, don't you? You've already paid £10,000. Yes, I can see a first person over there. And if you could just say what your first name is so we can refer to it, that'd be great.
Hi, it's Jo. My question is, if the men had been served the ad via the banner ads, do you think it would have had the same effect?
Right, that's one for you, is it?
Shall I? Yeah.
Come.
Thank you. No. But I think it would have had a very different effect, because if you think about it, what would you have done if you could listen before you could speak? So there's an enormous amount of power, and that will never be taken away from the ability to speak to people en masse, and that's not going to go away. But imagine what you could also do. So imagine what you could also do if you wanted to do what Alfred Leet had done on an individual level. If I could listen before I talk to you or any of the people in the audience and prey on your insecurities specifically. That would have been powerful. That would have been influential, wouldn't it? If I could have known exactly what it might be that would make you go down to the recruiting station and fight. If I could understand some of that and make sure that the message you got was different from the two people sitting opposite you. Now, you can then question that might be enormously kind of ethically suspect. It might not be the kind of thing you want to do. We might feel deeply uncomfortable in voting for something like that, just saying. But you can't deny its influence, and you can't deny that the power you could have had if you'd been able to deliver an additional layer on top of that was talking to the hearts and minds of individuals as well as en masse.
Hannah, do you want to go at that question?
Yes, please. I think you're right, it would have been different, and but I think the content of what they would have been delivered on that ad server would have been true to the four things that I spoke about. So, yes, we have different ways of addressing mass audiences using synthetic personalisation, but what we do in the content of adverts is exactly the same because Leet pioneered that. So yeah, the way we are served adverts is different, but the content has been influenced by Leet's advert.
Okay, thanks for that first question. Next question.
Hi, I'm Dan. Question for Alex. How does ad blocking tarnish Dave Zinman's legacy?
That's up to you, really, isn't it? So all of you, actually, who are going to spend the next, say, 20 years or so of your lives working in this industry. People block ads for a bunch of reasons, because they slow sites down, because they're boring, because they're pushy, because they're annoying, because they're optimized to the wrong thing, because they're like the reason that we block a lot of ads is because they're still doing the AT&T thing that the first bloody banner ad was doing 21 years ago, saying, do you want to click this? Do you want to click it? Go on, click it, click it. And we're putting our money behind the ads that make people do that most. And with that, Dave Zinman's not dead, by the way. So Dave Zinman, God rest his soul, probably wouldn't be too happy about that. But it's up to us, to all of us, to take what's possible, the ability to kind of listen before we talk, and do better stuff with it. And actually, I think ad blocking is a really good way of saying to us, you're not doing a good enough job. You're not taking advantage of that power, and you're not kind of taking the responsibility for what happens. So you probably wouldn't be best pleased, but it's a great signal to those of us who have got to find the next generation of creative things to do with this stuff.
So I think this is a question for Hannah as well.
Absolutely, I think ad blocking puts the influence in the consumer's hands. Of course, we can all block those ads. I don't think you can deny that Dave Zinman and there were two others who created the ad block too, so there's three of them.
Yeah, I edited them out.
Yeah, so he's not alone, the most influential person to get advertising. But the three ad blocking consumers. Obviously, yeah, basically puts it to the consumer, and it does diminish his influence tenfold, surely, if we do not get served the ads that he's trying to serve us.
Thank you very much. Thank you. There's a person over there. I'll come back to you. Keep your hand. Yeah, terrific, thanks.
Hello. My question is, Didn't Zinman just automate a process that was already there? So how is that influential?
Yeah. I almost picked a bloke called Henry Ford who automated horse-borne transport. Rule 1, it's written on my hand. It's written on my hand. Always heckle the audience. Yes, he did, and in doing so, he unlocked a whole new set of kind of possibilities with it. So by automating something, by making it 10 times faster, you unlock a lot more creative opportunity in it. If I can do something in a 10th of the time, or a 100th of the time, or now a millionth of the time, I can find new ways to act with it. And what it throws open to all of us is a challenge that you go, we, all of us, need to find new ways of acting with advertising, and we haven't cracked it. We obviously haven't cracked it. Ad blocking, crappy banner ads, declining click-through rates, the fact that we're all still talking about click-through rates, mean we haven't cracked it. But you didn't ask me who's done the most good. You asked me who's the most influential, who's going to set up the conditions that mean that your career in advertising is going to be completely different from the careers of people who worked in it a generation ago. And he's one of those people, I think. Hannah.
I'd agree with my mate Charlie in the audience who just asked that question. I think, thanks.
Okay, any more friends like to ask?
My question is for Alex. And I got one for Hannah as well. So for Alex, my question is, why wouldn't you choose Tim Berners-Lee, the creator of the internet? Like in what you just said, that he created an opportunity for advertisers to advertise. And for Hannah, in your presentation, you said that guy was like a celebrity. What's your definition of a celebrity? If that's
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So, I don't know the dictionary definition of celebrity, but at the time, he was about as celebrity as you get. So he would have been known, obviously there wasn't internet TV, there was just poster ads and radio. And he would have been all over the radio at the time. He was the head of the British Army. He was with adverts trying to get as many men to be recruited into the British Army. And therefore he was like the David Beckham of the time. He was the absolute influencer. Yeah. He was massive.
Yeah. Okay, who's next?
Can I answer mine?
Oh, sorry. I didn't. I'd forgotten.
No.
You took a step.
I took a bullet. Just because I think it's a lovely question, and I'm going to really unfairly steal some of Marie's language, actually. And she talked about who controls the culture and the context. And Tim Berners-Lee invented the culture and the context. And so he's the kind of the grandfather of internet culture, if you like. He's PewDiePie's granddad. The DNA test is still pending, but he created the culture and the context, and Dave Zinman created the response, which is how do you advertise? How do you be an advertising person in this world that we've created for ourselves? And that, I guess, why he's really interesting.
Right. Nobody's yet asked the critical question, which is how it is that you can stop ads following you around the internet when you've already bought a bloody thing. Well, I mean, that's why people block it, isn't it? Because you've already bought something and somebody insists on sending you stuff about stuff you've already bought. What you need to develop is something that says, after about a year, we guess that by now you've probably worn whatever that was out, or you got fed up with it, or the dog's chewed it, and so on, so we're going to send you a reminder for another one. So sort that out, will you? That's your job. Have we any more questions? I think there's somebody at the back, is there? The key light's right in my eye. One more question. Is that all we got time for?
Hiya. My colleague is out now, so I'm a floating voter that you need to convince at the back here. And I think when you've got this kind of influential debate, sometimes it's nice to have It's a Wonderful Life kind of thinking. And if the guys you've mentioned hadn't been born, would someone else have just come along and done something very similar, if not exactly the same thing? And whether you can kind of stake a claim for yours being particularly influential and not just the person that did it first.
Can you keep the microphone for a moment, because I've got a question for you. I can see the key light. You're a young man with a big beard.
Yeah.
And I've noticed there are a number of football clubs that have young men with very big beards now for them in a way that didn't used to exist. Can you just explain very quickly to me what that's all about?
Well, I don't know, maybe David Beckham had a beard at one point.
No, but these are serious beards. I mean, these are kind of beards like Karl Marx had and Friedrich Engels looking up and stuff like that. And now they've got them on the football field. And you'd have thought eventually they're going to get so heavy their heads are going to kind of drop forward and so on. So I was just wondering where this is actually, but possibly. Let's talk about it afterwards. Anyway,
Okay, yeah.
who'd like to start?
Of course, all the people we spoke about were of the moment and of a moment. PewDiePie, David Beckham are very current at this moment. Al Philippe was of his moment. Luckily, he was alive when Kitchener was head of the British Army when we did go to war. Of course, if he hadn't been, we could have lost that war. None of us would be alive today. Huge influence there. But I think if he wasn't alive, I think it's a bit like asking how long's a piece of string, because we could all philosophise about whether these people weren't alive, but the fact that they were, and of course someone else could have illustrated that poster that I spoke about, but he did it so brilliantly, and he did enlarge Kitchener's moustache to make it more influence. He did a few things. It wasn't just a photo of that, and it was his creativity that made that poster influential. He used those 4 words that I spoke about, and thank God he did, and probably someone who would have come about the next day wouldn't have done that, so it wouldn't have had the same influence, I don't think.
Yeah, someone else would have invented it. You know what? Because it's so boring, but so important. Someone else would have invented it. But it's a bit like asking, if all of you weren't in this room, would somebody else be the next generation of advertising? Yeah, probably. But are they going to do what you're going to do? Are they going to make the impact that you're going to make? Are they going to create the exact same sparks that you will in the world? So, how can I put this so I don't over-dramatise it? This is either a vote for the past or a vote for the future. This is either a vote for the dead or a vote of confidence in the living. I don't think that's overplaying it, so please vote for the future, vote for yourselves, vote for Dave Zinman. Thank you.
That was so cheeky and outrageously over the top. I'm not at all sure that I shouldn't let Hannah have her kind of final 2 words, but then she'll just say, yeah, go on, Hannah, just respond to that. No, come on, it's fair.
If you don't think 17 million people who died in World War I, if we're going to allow them to be forgotten tonight, then vote for Alex.
Vote for the man who killed them.
Yeah. So that was completely outrageous. Okay. Who can tell me what happened to Lord Kitchener? Do you know, what did they teach you? What did they teach you? He was torpedoed. Everybody knows that. Everybody with a computer as large as you said your dad's computer was, etc. Speaking of somebody who's old enough to be your dad, I never owned a computer that even looked remotely like that, but the Atari ST, if you don't know, for those of you, there's a couple of old Asian people, that was quite a machine in its own time. I think it had, 64K of memory. Seriously. There's probably less than a JPG that you have, or a JPEG you have in your phone. Anyway, that's it. I'm going to ask you to go and sit down again. I'm not going to make you do this while you're still up here. Right. You've had it outlined for you. Alex has outlined it as a vote for the past or a vote for the future, and of course, knowing your ages, etc., that's a sort of outrageous thing, really, because who's going to vote for the past? But on the other hand, made his case pretty well, and Hannah has said that there are some eternal virtues as represented in the character of this Mr. Leet, and in that particular poster, which go on forever. So essentially, you have quite a stark choice. Now, this isn't where you vote for the person you want to throw out of the balloon. This is where you vote for the last one standing, the last person in the balloon. And it's 1 for Hannah, and it's 2 for Alex, and you start now. I don't know why that music was so short. I mean, they haven't finished yet. And I'm not carrying on with it. And if everybody could come back onto the stage, thank you very much. Yeah, please. The final winner is Alex 1. If you, Alex? Final, sorry. The final one. What? Who?
Thank you.
The winner is Alex 1 and Dave Zinman.
Thank you. Oh, thank you very much. I'll pass it on to Dave.
I've had a word with Dave Zinman, and he says that's good and that's cool with him. But can we also have a very, very big hand for the other 3 people? It takes an enormous amount of guts to come up here and do this in front of an audience of your peers at relatively short notice. I think they've all been completely... I'm not just saying that like kind of one of those sort of smarmy hands. I think they've really been good and really given me a lot to think about. So let us thank them as well. Thank you. I gather there'll be bottles of something, so that'll be good. And a big thank you to News UK, firstly for giving me a job, and secondly for hosting this. And we'd like to thank you very much for being, I think smarmy hosts always say, such a terrific and tremendous audience. But actually, it's pretty true, isn't it? Actually, yeah, you felt supported and loved and cherished and so on, and laughed at, and so on. So, many thanks to you too, and have a good evening.